All right, good. Ready to do this? Let's go. Let me just get it. See, 172, 173, 174. All right. Okay, Jason Vericart, ready? 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Solar Coaster with Josh Porter here in Maui, and Mr. Vericart is still in Osaka. How you doing today, Jay?
Good morning. You get right up on the mic there. That was good. Wake me up.
We get a chance today to follow up on our previous show, which was PSH with David Bissell, and one of our news and events today actually covers that, which is cool. And we're kind of getting into hydrogen a bit and bringing out some of the shows that we recorded this summer. This one in particular is exciting because it's the largest hydrogen facility, or the new clean green hydrogen facility that is in the United States. That's the Wells Dam facility, Wenatchee, Washington, with Meagan Vibbert of Douglas PUD. So, you know, what a cool place and really cool people. And by the way, Jay, they were pretty accommodating, saying, hey, when you guys are ready, come on out and be a part of this. So I can't wait to go. You know me, I love road trips, bro.
You're all about the road trips. I'm all about the hydrogen. So it's going to be a good one. Guaranteed.
This is a really neat one. And the interview, I'm not sure if you get a chance to check it out again recently, but, you know, Meagan talks a lot about why they would go about something like this. And it's so cool as a kind of juxtaposition to David Bissell and KIUC, Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, which was our previous show. You know, you look at the geography of these environments, and there are certain things that allow certain technologies to flourish, and that pencil, great, right? So in the case of Kauai, PSH, pump storage hydro, was a great mechanism. It is a great mechanism, is being worked on to move that community to closer to 100% renewable energy. It looks like about 90% throughout the entire 24-hour day, which is pretty awesome. And then you have something like the Wells project, which we'll have the interview today in this show. And this is, you know, it's a different set of circumstances, right? You're up in Washington. You've got some of the cheapest energy in the country. You have a run-of-river project. You have, I think it's like 600 megs. I have to look at the numbers again into the size of the dam. But I mean, the bottom line is they have excess power. What do they do with that? How do they reduce the problems in their system? And green hydrogen and Cummings electrolyzers, 5 megas, that's the solution they decided on. And this is so rad, man. And by the way, there's a similarity in these two institutions, Jay, that I don't know if you caught right off the bat, but they're both like these cooperatives. Basically, the PUD is a cooperative as well. Like it's a kind of a community-based electric company organization, and they have a similar mentality and vibe about them, you know? So that's what I love about these. The innovators are like the people's movements in a sense, right? So super rad. So that's today's show. What say you, Mr. Vericart, today?
Absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's one of those things that we keep reiterating, or at least keeps coming up in our conversations, right? Is that these things work in certain geographies, in certain locations, in certain political climates, whatever it happens to be. Certain technologies really are like a no-brainer fit. What I do like, and what you just mentioned, was the whole community aspect of these things. These companies that aren't really, they're not investor owned companies. They are the community who set up a board, bought their utility, and is making the decisions for themselves, instead of just what is the short-term bottom line best gain for our stockholders. It's how do we want to live over the long term? And
I love it.
There's no better way to do this.
I love it. It's so funny, man. It's like, you know, the incentive for the company is very clear, right? You know, hey, what's your stock? What's your price, the share value? But the incentive for an organization like the PUD and Wenatchee with the Wells and with KIUC is, how do we take care of the stakeholders, which are not shareholders, they're the people in their community that they're just providing electricity for. And how do we do that over the long term?
Mark my words on this, is that those are the ones that are going to be making the best profit margins later on down the road.
I know. That's the sick part of the whole thing, man. They're going to smoke these fools. Oh, it's so great. I love it. Okay. So,
Yep.
hey, everybody, thanks for tuning into the solar coaster. Me and Jay are back up and running, having fun doing the coaster things. We got a lot of great things coming up in the upcoming months. Today is March 16th. We'll be airing this show shortly of 2022. And we're going to jump right into news and events. And Mr. Verkut, I know you picked out some great things for today. So which one would you like to start out with?
So you've been sending me an absolute deluge of news and interesting things. It's because we haven't talked about all this. I mean, we talk all the time, but this one stood out to me. A Honolulu Civil Beat article talking about Big Island Bioenergy. I mean, we've talked about bioenergy before. We've had the Kings on with their sunflower fuel. Biofuel, etc.
Yeah.
We've talked about burning trash. I mean, all these things. But this particular biomass that they're trending on burning is just trees.
Dude, I mean,
like what century are we living in where we have to set up a power plant that burns trees, specifically eucalyptus trees that they just clear thousands and thousands of acres.
Yeah, this is nuts. And actually, our good friend Marco Mangelsdorf from Big Island was quoted in this article from Civil Beat. This is March 14th article entitled "Big Island Bioenergy Plant Searches for More Trees and Regulatory Approval." And I just sent him a text message. I was like, "Burning trees to make power today is cray cray."
Yeah,
I was like, what?
It's like that Spider-Man thing.
What are you thinking?
And
as you dig into this article, they've been having trouble with regulation, and they're having trouble with getting land leases in order to harvest the eucalyptus or the trees that have been planted for commercial purposes. Yep. And they're talking about a net zero carbon emission, but which I find really debatable.
It's a little silly because I don't think these eucalyptus were ever planted with the express intent of just burning them.
Right.
I do want to make a couple of things very clear. They've got leases from 3 sources already that amount to about 11,000 acres worth of trees. Now that sounds like a lot, but I did the math. Big Island is actually about 2.5 million acres, so it's 0.04% of 0.004, sorry, 0.004 of the total area of Big I. It's not a super significant portion, but I think it's the whole concept behind it is just absurd when you have so many other options, especially in a place like Big Island where you have all the land area. You could put out fields of solar farm. You have the wind options available to you everywhere, although that's coming up in a different conversation.
Yeah, I had a couple of problems with this one, Jay, and along those points, I mean, I think they need a couple thousand acres a year to operate, right? And so how far can you get? They only got a few years of operational operability, I guess you could say, operational capacity with the amount of acreage they have
before they
scheduled.
literally burn through.
And then and then in the article, the guy's like, yeah, it's been tough to get this thing, permitted. He's talking about a decade of him, fighting this thing. And at the end, he goes, well, if we can't get the leases and if we don't happen to have the trees, we can always ship in the trees from other islands or from the mainland. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Let's ship in these massive logs, to burn them in Hawaii. I'm like, man, what century are we in? That's got to be less dense than shipping in bunker, right? Like in terms of the amount of stuff. So you're
talking about energy density for volume. There's no way it can compete. And we're trying to get away from the diesel or bunker fuel anyway. Right. It all comes back to this non-appealable power purchase agreement that they have, right? They can't get rid of it. They're under contract to do this thing.
Oh, with the utility, they have to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, so do you think are they in a situation where they're like, oh man, we started this 10 years ago before PV dropped, and now it's like, this is useless. Just, I don't get it, man. I really don't get it. I'm really kind of, I mean, if it comes down to the contractual law,
there needs to be a renegotiation. It was something. You can do anything else, but shipping in trees or just burning all the trees on the island is not.
They're going for
a solution.
They're going for an Easter Island 500 years
ago. Like when we try to talk about nuclear, it's just no, the conversation stops. Well, so trees,
Yeah.
No.
So look, we got plenty of intermittent resources for energy production. Of course, storage and dispatchable and firm power is what they're looking for. Ironically, Big Island has one of the, this has PGV, the Puna geothermal plant, which is like I think around 20% or a fifth of the overall power of the actual island. So they already have like this, it, existing resource that they're harnessing successfully for firm, and now they're going for something else when there are potentially other options. And we talk about biomass and things like I know in KIUC Bissell says that it's just priced out, doesn't pencil out, doesn't work. But when you look at something like the Kings, that's an interesting type of renewable kind of resource. You're talking about seasonal sunflowers and different types of stocks to be able to make, what do you call it, biodiesel.
Yeah, and people talk about bridge fuels, right? So we're looking at something to hold us over until you can't just snap your fingers and immediately have a billion windmills and billion solar panels and whatever else. The hydrogen infrastructure, all that stuff just doesn't materialize overnight. You need to be able to do something. And I'm pretty sure most of us by now have seen the diesel retrofit kits. You can buy a retrofit to go on your existing diesel motor that will allow you to take the used fry oil from McDonald's and pour it into your gas tank. And it doesn't sound like a really good idea, but when you think they're just going to dump it anyway, at least use that and then move on to the more sustainable fuels until that particular vehicle is end of life, right? So you get your full use out of the vehicle before shelving it and moving on to an electric while you own those things.
One question.
And that would work very well for like city buses and things when they have a giant fleet and I have 3,000 buses in my fleet. Well, we can buy 10 new buses a year just for budgeting reasons.
Yeah.
We'll buy electric, but you still have, and how many years is it going to take to work through that fleet?
Right. I mean, you have sunken, those are assets with like sunken, what do you call it? Commitments, right? You have you've already invested in them and you want to utilize them for their full value, but you don't want to create problems with climate change or, or carbon emissions. So yeah, you can use that kind of approach. But I mean, this tree thing is just, it's just straight bonkers. If you ask me, I can't really see any merits to it. So if it genuinely is, and they're talking about, 20% of the power, like comparable to PGV, and they're talking about zero effect on climate change. I think that's just nonsense. That's all based on their commitment to replant, right? So it's like, let's take all that sequestered carbon, and I guess they're not scrubbing, right? So let's take all that sequestered carbon and release it, and then hey, we promise we're going to go and plant new trees. I mean, no, this sucks.
Even then, I went down the rabbit hole. Now, these trees have been out there for decades at this point, right? They're big trees that they want to cut, and it's about a decade for a eucalyptus to reach 60% of its total height, and then it takes many decades after that as the growth kind of slows. So you're looking at 30-40 years before those trees that they harvest will ever be to the level that they were, or close to the level that they were before.
They'll be flooded by that time, the fields of just trees as they're trying to get out. Look, anyway, Marco Mangelsdorf has a great couple quotes in here. I'll just read those and we can move on. But burning trees or fossil fuels is archaic when clean sources of energy exist like solar, wind, hydro, geothermal. We absolutely can and must do better in terms of power generation on this island, if not the whole state. Mangelsdorf said, we're in a planetary emergency, a planetary crisis as far as the stuff we're putting in the atmosphere. And so burning trees releases more greenhouse gases into the environment than burning coal, Mangelsdorf said, citing scientists to weigh on the matter. So, that
completely puts aside like the whole land management aspect. You have soil, surface soil runoff and all sorts of other things that happen when you go and clear these fields of forested trees.
There's probably a plethora of issues here. Okay, so this is let's hope this thing does not move forward. There's definitely some other opinions here. I think Chris Lee is quoted, or no, it's actually Lee, it's the CEO, and he's not Chris Lee, the senator, but he's talking about the supposed benefits. I candidly, I don't buy any of these. Let's just move on to something else.
Well, okay. One last thing. I mean, if you're on Big Island, talk to the utility, ask them to renegotiate this particular power purchase agreement with this company.
That's the way to do it. That's
Public
what
pressure
Jason's
does
saying.
help.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, how about the offshore wind stuff? Because I'm going to get excited about that after our experience.
This is a big
over
deal.
there.
So we have Biden's big wind initiative coming through, and it looks like at the state level as well, we've got a lot of action happening. Offshore wind energy bill sails through the Hawaii State Senate. Then the House is about to vote on it. This is a huge bill, Senate Bill 2535, coming through, asking for 400 plus megawatt worth of offshore wind.
Pretty sizable.
There's a big discussion here. If you go through it, it's many, 62 turbines, 15 miles offshore. The discussion here has always been, I don't want to see it. Right? Just like most everything, I don't want to have to see it. In order to get the wind so far offshore that it won't be visible from shore, especially these big giant ones, it needs to be something like 30 miles.
30's the floating, basically.
But it would have to be floating stuff, and that's not this. So
right.
What does that make the coastline look like?
Yeah. So, of course, okay. So on the one hand, I gotta say, I was excited to see that this was in the legislature and that they're working on this. And there seems to be political support for wind, which I on personal basis, I'll have to read through 2535 in detail. Looks like Senator Chris Lee is here discussing this. We're talking about the windward side of Oahu. That's actually his constituency, Waimanalo, these kinds of areas, upper Oahu. We have found out from DBED that solar, we've said this plenty of times, we'll say it again for the sake of this show, that solar resources cannot be deployed at enough scale in order to meet the 100% renewable energy mandate for the island of Oahu. They don't have the area. So they're looking for solutions, right? So what are some of those solutions? Well, apparently you could burn trees.
Not on Oahu,
right? For firm, bear in mind we're talking about different things: firm, dispatchable versus intermittent. But in the case of offshore wind, now we have political support on the federal level. We're talking about what's happening out in Martha's Vineyard with Vineyard Wind and something like 800 megs of Haliade X's, 60 and change, 14 meggers. We're talking about I don't know if we covered in this today's show, but leases that are actually getting traction and numbers are coming in and multi-billions of dollar leases for the New York area, the New York corridor. There's stuff that's happening down in the Southeast. There's potential out in the Gulf. There's potential out in California. And there's potential here in our home state in Hawaii, man. And so when I think about this, after talking with Andrew Doba and Lars over at Vineyard, that was one of the conversations we had. We're like, can we do it out here? And they're like, we don't really cover that area. We're not really sure, but it's so good to see this happening right here, this discussion at least, right, to bear it out and find out what the impact is. So I do remember talking to them about, what would it look like on the horizon at 15 and 30? Well, 30, you don't see it basically. And that's floating, and floating, that technology is not really mature, which is interesting. Right. So that floating technology at 12 meg, 14 meg, Haliade X style, like super mega scale wind is really in development. It's not like concrete at the moment. Right.
Yeah. This is still in its infancy as far as a technology, whereas firm anchored wind is pretty well known,
and that's being deployed and that's being permitted and approved. So that they're focusing on this anchored, but there you can see within the legislature they're talking about trying to not have strict limits on the actual distance. And in a place like Hawaii, this environment, people are, if people are sensitive in general about the natural environment, what they see, they don't like change. They don't like to see change to the natural environment. But we have to make some decisions here, right?
Yep.
There's cost benefit in this. And if we prize, carbon-free energy and being this leader in the world, that is the state of Hawaii, then we're going to have to make some decisions about how we handle that for the island of Oahu. To me, wind feels like one of the best cost benefits out there that we have access to for a lot of additional energy, intermittent, that being said. And I think that, we're going to have to kind of fight this fight, and it's not going to be an easy one. People are going to get real excited about it. And when you think about this, Jay, think about this. In Hawaii, you have this concept of ahupua'a, right? You have from the ridge line, you've heard me talk about it ad nauseum, right? I love this stuff. From the mountain ridges all the way down through the reef, and being one kind of intact ecosystem that a community harnesses and is responsible for multiple generations. This is
being
deep,
part of,
deep.
not even,
Aina. Yeah, part of, like, we're actually this. And so the concept of the Aina out here is probably at a different level than on the mainland. If you want my opinion on that, I would say that's the case.
I would agree with that.
So now you're saying, hey, we're going to put windmills out at the tip of the Ahupua, right? And maybe near your reef. And in this article, a couple of the people mentioned that, a couple of the citizens comment on, not that term, but they talk about, we don't want the reef disturbed, we don't want the fish stock disturbed, we don't want, and that's something you gotta kind of respect. So does this find its way to offshore wind? And are we the environment, like in so many cases in the past, we meaning Hawaii, where we are testing the newest technology to make things work? Could this be an environment where offshore 30-mile out floating wind could be pioneered? That's kind of the thing that I look at when I see this, because I don't think people are going to let that go, man. You're going to be like, they don't want their humu nuku apua messed up by big windmills,
or whatever. I mean, bird strike is always a big conversation when you put out windmills, and we have a lot of seabirds as well. There is 27 turbines of floating energy wind as part of this bill. So it's part of the project, part of the proposed projects. We're going to have to see exactly what that entails. But it's still, permitting takes 9 to 10 years, I read, which is just a huge process. So there's going to be a lot of conversation over this next decade, assuming that it gets through the House.
Can you imagine, though? I mean, try to just imagine what it would look like to have 40 wind turbines. You have to have, first of all, you need undersea cable, right? That's a whole other discussion.
Yep.
Just putting undersea cable out here has been impossible between islands, right? Politically, it's a non-starter. And so now you have to have undersea cable from that, let's say it's 13 miles or 15 miles, and it's anchored, right? And it's so you have to do that. Then you have to have some development at the actual shoreline, right, to handle that energy coming in. So like in the case of Massachusetts and over in Martha's and that area that we interviewed Andrew Doba on, in Vineyard Wind, you're talking about New Bedford's, like the entire community there is looking at all kinds of new jobs, new infrastructure, and these, it's like a port in a sense, right? It's got an energy port. And so that kind of thing would need to happen presumably somewhere here where you're going to bring that energy in, So
that's what I was going to say. I mean, there are some real benefits to this. I mean, you do get this visual impact, but having the carbon-free energy, having the ability to do that, having the jobs that come with it now, not just the installation, but all the maintenance. There's ships that go back and forth and maintain the cables, just literally running the cable up and through the ship and down, and they constantly do repairs. All these things will be, or should be, and that should be part of the contract, is sourced as local jobs, local talent.
Heck yeah.
It's good paying, high tech work.
And that can be spec'd as union labor. That's what they did over in New England. And that was a big deal. It was national news, man. So, we could do the same thing here, get people employed for a very long period of time. And, from my perspective, this is pretty exciting tech. And I'd like to see this kind of thing. It's a solution. It's a good solution relative to some of the other opportunities out there for a place like Oahu. If you want if I were to have to go yay or nay, I would go yay. And I would say yay with the caveat of let's do the research. Let's do the, what do they call it? The environmental impact analysis. Let's find out how this is going to, impact to the community long term. But then the other thing here, just to bring out the issue here, Doug McLeod of Hawaii Energy Conference has often discussed. In fact, we did a show with Henry Curtis of Life of the Land Media, Elani Media, and he and Doug were throwing around the idea of security. So outside of just the general capacity of these systems to live in that very hostile environment, right? We're talking about the North Shore of Oahu in the middle of the Pacific, right? Yeah. That's one thing. But then what about bad actors? You've got subs out there. You've got, malicious intent kind of other countries and people and or armies and navies and stuff. What if they came out and just, cut it, and then boom, your power is gone that you're relying upon? That's something they've talked about. it's something to just keep in mind. I don't know how easy or difficult it is to do that, but that's a
regional defense thing. I mean, we do have a military presence in the state, so
right. Stay off of our windmills.
And of course, like, it's always the wind conversation. Although the wind's usually pretty steady out there. Storing it, bottling it, hydrogen, ammonia, whatever it happens to be.
Isn't that exciting?
And having a stockpile. I mean, that will sit indefinitely, assuming your storage vessel is okay. So you can bank a decent amount of energy and hold it, as opposed to like lithium technologies.
And we're learning that you can
definitely possible.
You can hold this energy, long duration storage. When you look at stuff like PSH, pumped storage hydro out in Kauai, when you look at what we're going to talk about today about hydrogen with the Wells Project in Wenatchee, Washington. There's also, we're going to talk about a news article on long-term storage, thermal storage, which is also an exciting prospect. So yeah, man, cool stuff. All right, Jay, we're in your capable hands. Keep us going.
Always fun. I like talking about new tech, and the perovskite thing. I think we talked about when they first were playing in the lab with a boron-based perovskite. Now, perovskite is a type of chemical crystal and structure that you can put lots of different elements in it. But when you use it with semiconductors, you can actually get a photovoltaic type of system. The nice thing is that it can be suspended in a liquid medium, which means you get to print it. Literally printing solar panels, which is really cool. Or large scale, think printing press, just large scale sheets rolling through.
So inexpensive production methods, basically.
Super easy to manufacture. The problem is that it has traditionally been really, really low efficiency. When we talk about the total limit for silicon solar cells is actually in the low 30 percentiles, 32 point something.
You mean the theoretical limit? The
theoretical limit.
Yeah.
A lot of these perovskite molecules were like in the 10% range, and that was their theoretical limit. So it really wasn't very good. But they've been getting better because you get to play with different elements, right? They keep combining different things and playing with it in the lab, and they've actually got it up to like the high 20s now, 26, 27%. And this weird technique for layering them, like some of them are sensitive to different wavelengths of light, so you have one that's really works well in the red spectrum, but it kind of lets the other stuff through, and then you could put another layer underneath that works really well in the blues, and so they work in tandem with each other. But the newest thing is being able to print over a perovskite a kind of just a surface layer, keeping the photovoltaic properties of that perovskite, but then being able to color it. And it's a matte finish color. It looks like normal siding. And that's the hitch, is now you can have a regular panel siding that you put on your house, a regular roof that you put on your house, and it could be photovoltaic, it could be a solar cell, and you'd never know. It looks really cool.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man, when we think about BIPV, building integrated photovoltaics.
Yep.
This is we know that our buildings are out in the sun, and there's a lot of surface area. It's not just the roofs. It's not, and it's the entire, in many cases, if you're in the north latitudes, the entire southern section, solid 180 of the we call it the degrees. That's, and I can see it on my home here in Maui. I have a southwest in my back. I have a southeast in my back. I have a southwest up by my driveway. Right. And if I come home at 5, 6 p.m. and I'm up country, it's great weather. It's great climate. But if I touch the side of the house, man, that thing is cooking. It is so hot. The lateral wall of my southwest face of my house. And and there's a little black, like entryway piece of plastic or metal at my door, and if I'm barefoot, you will hear me scream 10 houses down when I step on that thing, because it's so hot.
Do that.
Yeah. So I've been meaning to remove it, but I've got around to it. So when I think about BIPV, I'm like, there's definitely shit tons, excuse my French, Jay, of of photons hitting shit tons of photons. I remember saying that earlier and thinking, oh, that's kind of interesting, of hitting the side of that building and harnessable, and you could do something with that. That's exciting. But we really haven't had the practical building materials available to do that, throughout our overall construction industry. But you think these they hold somewhat of a promise for that?
I think it's getting there. This has actually been driven by the German mandate. All new structures as of 2022 should be including a photovoltaic system. This stems from Germany's reluctance to deal with nuclear. It's something we talked about when we were going to Europe and traveling through Germany and France and such, is that France has very much bet on nuclear energy being a long-term energy solution for them. The Germans don't want the nuclear energy, and so they're pushing very, very hard into wind and PV. And so this passed many, many years ago and has now come to its active stage, where any new construction this year needs to have a photovoltaic system in it, or it won't be permitted in Germany.
Remarkable, huh? And they're a little leader in I think intermittent renewable energy per capita, like Germany.
Right. Well, they still have significant energy needs, and they refuse to look at the nuclear option. So,
although I mean, well, they're on a continent, so they can just buy nuclear from France probably at the end of the day.
Yeah, there's high voltage lines running back and forth.
Right. We looked at that
all over the place.
Oh wow, yeah. And they're talking about it percentages. You see, I misunderstood. I thought the perovskites had higher percentages than silica, but you're saying no, the opposite.
Not yet. But it's getting very close. The game is, like I said, to layer those materials and to capture multiple frequencies, yep. And then have them placed optimally. I mean, the placement also makes a big difference. But just to be able to coat an entire, I mean, you can think about the surface area. The whole big problem is, like, how many panels can you put on your roof? Well, you only have so much space. They always have to be angle of incidence really placed. You put some careful thought into that, and you did that job for many, many years. And it's all about that. But if you can just, for the same cost, coat everything, and what you're talking about, remember we saw those vertical multi-sided panels there, that give you massive amount of energy in the morning, almost nothing at noon, and then massive amount of energy in the evening. Well, you can do the same thing with your entire building. Bloop, bloop. And think about large scale, like apartment buildings in cities and such. If you have that kind of surface area, so it's not just your little footprint on the roof, it's the entire surface of the building. The actual surface area becomes exponentially larger.
No, it's a good point, because when we think about solar today, the energy curve, the duck curve, the amount of energy that we consume versus how it's produced over a given day, where there's sun available to harness it, it's like we tend to consume at times outside of the peak of production. And in the case of the bifacials you described, it was an interesting contradiction to that standard, right? You could, if you were one of those weird guys who were like, I'm going to put up, a line of bifacials, so I get a big bump in the morning and I get a big bump in the evening, and I get these, this awesome kind of like basically a box of energy throughout the day. Whenever my solar system is on, it's always pumping, because I have my roof stuff and I have my crazy bifacials, giving me energy in the morning, in the late evening, late afternoon. But I mean, I didn't think of it from BIPVs from that perspective, but yes, it's the same conversation, isn't it? You're going to have a bump in the morning, you're going to have a bump in the evening, depending on the orientation of the building. And if you have conventional PV up top, it's going to broaden out the shoulders of that energy curve. And maybe regular folks may say, well, what the hell? Why is that important? But I mean, that you're using energy in the evening when you're home from work, you're using energy in the morning before you're going out to school and to work and stuff, right? So if you can reduce the amount of energy that's necessary for the utility to provide for you in those off-peak times through something like BIPV, you have a more resilient grid. You have greater capacity in your own home or environment or building or commercial building to be able to meet your own energy needs.
Times. That's when everybody gets home from work and kicks on the AC.
Yeah.
That's when they want to charge you.
That's so neat. So neat. Yeah. I love the idea of sucking up that heat from my southwest face of my house and putting it into air conditioning. Right. So,
well, for that, you're going to need some kind of solar thermal install as well.
Working
a
on it.
Sundrum
Working
or
on it.
something stuck on the back of the cell, or inside. I wonder. I mean, that would be a really interesting thing to have some fluid
Oh,
cooling
sure.
system inside, and it's not at all part of this this article. It's just neat to
Gotcha.
as a total system, something like that could be done.
And they're talking about 14% efficiencies, right? So you might
Yeah.
have 20% efficiencies up on roof with conventional PV, but it's limited, like you said, to a certain amount of roof area. If you have 14% on 2-3x the area on the sides that you're building, that's a considerable contributor to the amount of energy harnessable.
Yeah, why throw it away when you can capture it?
All right. Well, we were going to talk about we're just breaching into the world of thermal. Do you want to jump into what Gates and Chris Sacca are doing?
You've wanted to talk about this for a while. Go ahead.
All right. So basically, Gates has been out there working on, one of the most kind of egregious contributors to climate change, which is heavy industrial production of things like cement and steel, and I believe aluminum and these kinds of things. Like, how do they go about dealing with that particular area of carbon emissions? And so this article is from CNBC, actually. So Bill Gates, Chris Sacca invest in energy storage startup Antora to help heavy industry go green. And what's cool about this is they have a picture, of course, the obligatory picture of a bunch of windmills and solar panels doing happy things in green pastures. And then right next to it is this mysterious box, and it says Antora on the side, right? Well, what is that? Well, basically they're saying, hey, we've got abundant electrons now with the price of renewable energies dropping so precipitously. And why don't we take some of that and turn it into thermal energy and hold it in some form of a thermal battery. I'm using the air quotes because it's kind of figurative.
Just say heat.
Yeah. Let's hold that heat. Let's grab that heat and hold on to it so we can use it in manufacturing processes later. But how do you do that, right? Apparently, carbon is the technology that they're using.
I love that.
I love that at one point they go, oh, you may be counterintuitive to think about using carbon. I was like, I didn't think of it as counterintuitive, but because carbon is the problem. People hear the word carbon, they go, oh, that's the problem. But this is the solution.
Carbon in the atmosphere is bad. This is a big solid block. It's not going anywhere.
But this is cool, man. So they're basically saying, look, carbon doesn't change state. It doesn't change to a plasma, it doesn't change to a vapor. It's something that you can heat up really, really hot, like to 3,600 degrees or something like that. And it'll basically, and it'll cool down over time, but you get they were kind of a little ambiguous about the actual tech and how long it would last. I didn't see those kinds of specs in here. Like, I was like, where's the spec sheet? Just send me the spec sheet. I want to see how long. I
don't think they're that far along. This little image here is very much an artist's conception on it. It's not real yet.
Yeah.
But the technology sounds very, I want to say relatively simple and very sound. You can do lots of things with the heat once you capture it, including running some water back through it, flash it to steam, and then powering a turbine to get your electricity back. You can do that.
So you have effectively stored energy. In this case, it's in a thermal heat way and method, and you're using carbon to do it. And you could use that for various purposes. They're talking, of course, specifically about this really mean part of the contributor to climate change, which is heavy industry and manufacturing. So it'll be really neat to see. Of course, when we think about thermal, Jay, we tend to think about PVT and Sundrum, and actually, removing heat from PV panels. Like, that's when I thought it was kind of like in that world for a little bit. I was kind of like looking around going, how are you getting the heat?
Or concentrated solar liquid salt. That's the only other thing that comes to mind.
But it's neither of those. And I don't think here. That's not what's happening. They're talking about conventional PV having abundant electrons. I'm talking about a conventional wind having abundant electrons. And they're saying, we're going to use that. So I don't know if they're heating up some form of an element or what they're doing here. I want to see the actual
It would have to be just a heater element. Well, let's track them down. Gates is investing in them. They must be.
I love following that guy's stuff, man. He's always doing neat stuff. But these guys just got $50 million, so it can't be. I like, and you see this guy's shirt. He's wearing a cowboy shirt. I saw this guy. I was like, oh, I like this guy. I want to meet him. So basically saying, hey, there's and he's a neat guy. He went to Stanford and he came out and he created some kind of a solar company. Got acquired by SunPower, and then goes to Stanford and meets a bunch of other super smart guys, and they're trying to figure out how to take this stage of the renewable energy revolution and then position it to some of the big, problem areas like manufacturing of, cement, creation of cement, things like that, that really, really release a lot of carbon. So, yeah, neat guys. That was co-founder Justin Briggs, David Bierman, and the main fellow's name is Andrew Ponick. So let's see if we can get those folks on the show. That'd be fun.
Absolutely. I just want to go see it. A big toaster for carbon, the article says. It sounds like something you want to do.
Jay, you'll have to remind me, are we going to jump over to our main piece right now, or do you want to continue with some news and events?
Sounds like a plan. I'm super excited to hear about this one again. The interview was so long ago.
Yeah. Okay, folks. So we're going to head over to Meagan Vibbert. This is in Wenatchee, Washington. This is the Wells Dam project, 5 megawatt Cummins electrolyzer. This is pretty honkin' tech, the largest at this moment clean hydrogen facility in the United States of America. Here we go.
I've been with Douglas PUD for 20 years now, in the same role as Public Information Officer the whole time. And it's a great place. I don't know if you know much about PUDs, public utility districts, but we're not for profit. And we provide electricity and broadband services all throughout Douglas County.
Fantastic. So you're not for profit. So we have the Kauai Island Utility Cooperative in Hawaii. Are you familiar with them?
I'm not familiar with them, but yeah, the co-ops are the same thing. Municipalities, yep, all doing the same good race.
I love seeing that around the country. It's really encouraging in a space where it can be very different with these big utilities. So wonderful. And so in a space like that, of course, we want to understand how your organization went about the process of deciding to move towards hydrogen capture with hydro. So tell us about your hydro facility and about how you made the decision to get involved with hydrogen.
Yeah, that's a big part of our story, right? The Wells Project. So it's over 50 years old, and we're in the process of rebuilding all the generating units. And so that's aside from the story about hydrogen. But, there's times of year where the sun is shining and the wind is blowing and the snow is melting. So we're a run-of-river project, 840 megawatts. That you've got a lot of electricity on the market. And that time of year, you don't have a lot of demand because temperatures are kind of mild. And so every year we run into this problem where we have to generate power, because if we don't and spill it, it adds gas to the river, which causes problems for fish. And so you end up either paying someone to take your power for you or having an environmental problem. And so this was an opportunity. The hydrogen project was an opportunity where we could divert that power that we were either giving away or paying someone to take into an electrolyzer, and having not only solve the problem of that extra energy that we were producing, but also create a product that was useful for customers or the nation.
So isn't that interesting that and that type of an economic driver is something people might not necessarily think about right off the gate, but you have excess power and you're actually paying another state or locale to take that power off your hands, which I find remarkable. So when you think about the economics of this, that must have played a role, right? You've got this credit effectively if you get that power somewhere else.
Right. So, I'll talk a little bit more about all the other benefits that we feel like we'll have with this electrolyzer project that don't really have anything to do with hydrogen. But then your green hydrogen is the bonus, right? Because when you produce hydrogen we're using a PEM membrane electrolyzer. And so, there's no, when you use hydrogen, you burn it. The effluent is steam, right? And the energy going into making that hydrogen comes from a renewable resource, water, hydropower. Then it's considered green hydrogen. And so we're excited about that. Another benefit of having this hydrogen plant available, hydro projects we balance the grid, right? So we're connected with a lot of other utilities, and every 4 seconds, our big mechanical turbine generating units get sent a signal to either ramp up or ramp down. And that kind of constant motion can really wear on that big machinery. And so the idea with the electrolyzer is that rather than send those signals to the hydro plant and have it adjust its operations, we could send those signals to the hydrogen facility. And, you know, that's not a mechanical process, right? That's just I'm ramping up and down the electrolyzer. And so we hope that that'll take a lot of wear and tear off of the hydro project too.
You know, and I've heard a similar type of discussion in other spaces, like in microgrid, where you're using solar and storage to minimize the wear and tear in gensets, right? Because that's there's these common value propositions that emerge. Isn't that amazing? So you have maybe better longevity with your existing infrastructure because of this.
Right.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this electrolyzer and about, so that's one particular application that you have there. But how will you use the hydrogen? Do you have a sense of where this is going to be taken advantage of?
Right. So this is a 5 megawatt project, pilot project, we're calling it. We are building it in a fashion where we can phase it, build in phases, add cell stacks or more electrolyzers to it in the existing facility that we're building.
Right.
And so that 5 megawatts will produce about 2 tons of hydrogen per day, we figure. And that right now we're selling for industrial purposes and also fueling stations or transportation fuel. We did receive some state money for a fueling station. And so we'll be building one of those here in our area. And also we received a grant in partnership with the Bonneville Bonneville Environmental Foundation, which is I think they're tied to BPA, but they're building a fueling station over in the Olympia area, and we'll be providing the hydrogen for that fueling station.
Whoa. So that's actually having access to having the hydrogen is now creating the opportunity for these new fueling stations to be built. Right. So, wow, that's really cool. Okay, well, help me understand. I get a sense of what you're building, and what are the dates on this? How quickly are we going to see this this wonderful new technology active?
Well, not soon enough, right? So initially, when we started off this process, we thought we'd be in production by the end of this year, but for various material delivery reasons, mostly, we're looking at the first quarter of 2022 for production.
That's not too bad. I mean, that's right around the corner. And by the way, doing great things, innovative things often takes a little bit of time. So I think we're okay with that. Okay, help me understand. How is it that you're, did you call it a cooperative or a nonprofit? What was the term you used for?
Public Utility District.
Public Utility District, PUD. So how is it, do you think that it's part and parcel to being a PUD that you're able to do innovative projects like this? And do you see this being very like something that's going to happen a lot with utilities in the future?
Well, let's see. PUDs in Washington are only allowed to do what they're specifically authorized by the state legislature. So part of this story is back in 2019, we had to get authority from the legislature to produce, distribute, and sell this hydrogen. So that was kind of step one. The other part of this that makes it possible for Douglas PUD is that Wells project. You know, we have such a great green resource. I don't know if you're familiar with us, but our power rates are about 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour for our customers. So it's a very efficient. Yeah, we're very blessed with that. So
is that consistent throughout the year? Does that stay that way?
Yeah, I mean, that's our rate for customers.
2.3 cents per kilowatt hour. Do you know what the rates are in Hawaii? They are literally more than like 10, 15 times that. You know, which is, it's just one of the highest in the country. So you may have the lowest in the country. Do you have the lowest electricity price in the country?
I don't spend a lot of time researching if we're the lowest, but that's what I've heard several times. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's unreal. Well, on the other side of that, it must be difficult to make solar pencil, right?
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing, right? So, I mean, I think I heard 10 to 12 customers that you're able to do your own distributed generation. So you can have your own solar power. But I mean, they're not doing it for economic reasons. They're doing it
Right.
for their own social reasons, right? And
Right.
and that's great. But yeah, it really doesn't pencil out.
Here's a question for you. What percentage of your power generation is from the Wells facility? Is it like half, or is it most of it, or?
So we're a surplus system. So we're able to cover our whole county load with it.
So, okay. It's everything. It's everything. Wow. So interesting. And then, but I guess what I was trying to get to when I asked that question about how was being a PUD helpful in getting to this new innovation? I mean, is it the kind of environment where there's certain people around where they're just like, what can we do that's really innovative? Is it that kind of a kind of like, is it like a little think tank of energy people going, what do we do that's going to be like really, really cool? What's it like there?
Well, I would hope that we're like that. You know what, we saw that there was an issue, right? And so back to everything we do is for the benefit of our customers, right? And so here we had an efficiency issue with the Wells project, giving away power, or these power sales issues, environmental issues. What's a way that we can solve this? And also looking globally, what's the next thing? That we've talked about pump storage, we've talked about wind power. Those things didn't pencil out for us, but this hydrogen really is. And so far. And also going back to that Wells project that we own and operate, because we're a surplus system, we also have power sales contracts. And, the district is very financially conservative, I guess is the right way to say it. And so we've been able to have that Wells project put cash away for that, and so that we're able to do this type of a project without having to finance it at this point.
Wow. Got it. So you were frugal and you had the capital to be able to take these kinds of steps, and you were looking for innovative ways to do that. And one of the things that you just said is really kind of rings true to me, that whereas you looked at PSH, pumped storage hydro, you looked at wind, you looked at hydrogen, and hydrogen made sense for your region and for your situation. And it feels like that's what's going to happen around the world, that, organizations, utilities, or PUDs, or cooperatives, they're going to be making decisions like that. Like I just talked with Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, and they're working on a pumped storage hydro system. And that makes sense for them because you have elevation changes and you have a different economic model in terms of the cost of energy.
Yeah.
So very interesting, kind of reflecting these things we're learning and discovering.
Let's get some uses of hydrogen out there, right? So we're able to ramp up this facility to produce more hydrogen, but we would really need a place to use it, or a market for it.
Right.
And so the, chicken and the egg, which is what's going to happen first, the demand for it or the production of it. And so, I mean, even now here in rural Douglas County in the middle of Washington State, I mean, there's not any hydrogen cars, or very few. I mean, or we don't have any right now, but we'll be getting some to try in our fleet. So I guess the message would be to try out hydrogen, see if it's a good fit for you guys. Solar power, a lot of people are doing it with solar too. And there's also, there's a lot of technology going in, and different things being tried with, more small scale hydrogen production in with solar or wind power. And so
right.
I think the desire and the momentum is growing. And so that's exciting to be a part of it.
Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you very much. I could probably talk to you for hours, but I want to respect your time today. So this has been Meagan Vibbert, Public Information Officer from PUD. Wonderful to speak with you. So glad to learn about your Wells hydro facility and the new PIMs that you're putting in, the 5 megawatt electrolyzer from Cummings. Thank you for your time today.
All right. Thanks, Joshua.
I'll tell you what, man, this is like I said before with KIUC and the similarities of these kind of co-op oriented type of electric utilities, right? These guys are providing prior to this whole thing, the least expensive. She didn't quite say it too. I asked her and she was like, yeah, I think we are the cheapest in the country. They're like 2 or 3 cents a kilowatt hour. They got so much energy because, of how they've set this up and what their overall district is. And they're able to move into hydrogen to make it work and to reduce the friction on those drives inside of that, that hydroelectric system. And then they're able to develop a market, right? They're working with, various actors out there to develop actually a market for the hydrogen that'll be produced, the green hydrogen with the 5 megawatt modular electrolyzer. I don't know, man. It was so cool when I talked to her. What did you think? Do you have any opinions about that?
Oh, I mean, it's just absolutely critical. And I mean, we talk a lot about domestic manufacturing. There are companies that I can name right now who have designs on manufacturing in massive scale and then shipping hydrogen around just like they ship oil now. So there's really a lot of movement. It's going to be a valuable commodity. Being able to produce it domestically, not be beholden to any foreign sources or shipping issues, or at least ocean going shipping, it has a tremendous amount of value, more than just the kilowatt hour number.
Right. And that was part of this, like the big piece of this conversation. If you caught it, like their big motivator to do this was, hey, we either got to pay someone to take the electricity. It's like, what? We got to pay someone to take our excess electricity when things are really booming here, or we're going to have trouble with our electrical equipment of ramping the generators, the turbines up and down. Those are like mechanical devices that create friction and problems, and they actually break, right? So they have a different mechanism now to take that energy, and then they're like, this is going to help our existing system. That was their motivation, as I understood it. And then from there, they're like, well, we got all this green energy as a green hydrogen as a result of this. What do we do with it? I'm gonna turn the fan off. It was getting hot in here a second ago. And so then they're actually kind of pioneering, in a sense, in that regional area, different areas for consumption of that hydrogen where they can sell it, right? And we've seen out there are right now on the other end of that kind of food chain or supply chain, you have companies like Switch and All American Marine that are deploying hydrogen ferries in SF Bay today. And they're going, how do we get the hydrogen, man? So they're on the other end going, give me the hydrogen. And Wells is going, we got a bunch of hydrogen. What do we do with it? So they're going to meet, right? That's the thing about this industry. I just can't.
There's an energy market, electrical energy market. There's going to be a hydrogen market.
Right?
there's an oil market. There's a hydrogen market. It just manifests itself because there's people that have it and there's people that need it.
There you go. So that's Meagan Vibbert. We're going to get out there. We're going to do some footage soon. Maybe they will even continue to increase their 5 meg modularly in the future and build it out. They're talking about that as a possibility, but they're the largest in the country right now. And I haven't checked with them in about maybe 2 months, so it'll be interesting to see if it's already done. And then what's up and coming? Of course, we hear names like Plug, and we hear names Plug Power in the Alabama, New York, which is the Niagara hydropower region, and we hear new things. So I know you've got an article here, Jay. I'm looking right at it. Domestically, what's going on? What is it? Universal hydrogen? Can you tell us about that a little bit?
So there's a company out there, Universal Hydrogen, who has been dabbling in, I don't say dabbling, their main focus is retrofit kits for existing airframes. It's very difficult to make a new aircraft. I mean, Airbus and Boeing and these guys spend decades and billions of dollars in R&D before they ever go to like the FAA and say, hey, we have this new aircraft and we need you to test it. But it's a whole lot easier to just change out a power plant. You change the engine, the whole airframe is still the same. We're just changing the mode of propulsion. And so Universal Hydrogen's whole mission is to be able to change out the power plant from a traditional Jet A turbine engine, like a Rolls Royce or something, and put in a hydrogen burning turbine. Really interesting concept. They are different technologies, like fundamentally different. And I love hydrogen, this, but there's a problem with energy density in my head where you don't get enough. And it's very difficult to get these numbers. When you're talking about energy density, there's a couple of different ways you can talk about it. It's like volumetrically or just mass. By mass, hydrogen has huge amounts of energy. When it burns, you get a couple atoms of hydrogen, they burn, they combine with oxygen, and you get water vapor at the end. They release a tremendous amount of energy. It's like 3 times what your gasoline in your tank can do. And so it's absolutely used. Jet A is better because it's more refined as a fuel, but in the end, it's still gasoline, so it's a little hotter, but not by much. Hydrogen, however, you can't really compress it enough. I mean, when you talk about volume, that's where the hydrogen starts to fall down. It's only it's like a half of the energy density, maybe less. I lost the number. I apologize. I will get it. In fact, I have this vision in my head of a perfect chart which shows you exactly where all the energy densities are. I'm going to make this chart because I need it in my life.
So you're saying that there's trouble in in a purely electric, like a chemical reaction, that you get more energy out of hydrogen than you do from Jet A. But in the case of the practical transportability of it, or how it's brought on the plane, there's issues there.
To be able to store it. And so we're talking like if you put it in like a liter, so you have a liter of liquid jet fuel, you have a liter of liquid hydrogen.
Yeah.
Not only is the hydrogen more difficult to manage because it's under pressure and temperature constraints, but it doesn't have the same energy in that space.
Right.
And so that is the
energy
issue.
per volumetric space,
energy per space versus
Jet A.
energy per molecule.
Gotcha. So and
so
then that creates a problem.
It's a neat
for
conversation.
like
I mean, there are ways to make it better. They're actually talking about ammonia as well as fuel, although ammonia has a much more difficult time just igniting as a fuel. There's some real positives that ammonia is even stronger. I mean, if you think about ammonia as a molecule, it's got 3 hydrogens in it, and it can actually release even more energy than just hydrogen by itself, but it has a really hard time letting go of those bonds. So it makes it more difficult. And what I think they're trying to do is actually mix the fuels. So you'd have a hydrogen ammonia type of mix, which would be really interesting. But I don't know enough about it yet. I need to get these guys on the phone to find out.
So that's universal hydrogen.
Going back to the universal hydrogen story, is they've just signed an agreement or a letter of intent with H3 Dynamics. And H3 Dynamics is a company that specializes in fuel cell and powertrain solutions. So they're looking at this whole cohesive infrastructure.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess the point of this story here is that we have an effort in aviation for retrofittable engines in the hydrogen space, something that will consume the hydrogen that's being produced in facilities like the Wells project over in Wenatchee, but other ones all around the country, like the Plug one, which we'll hear about in a little bit. And the more that we see those types of new technologies emerge and these partnerships emerge, the closer we're going to get to the right kind of mix, right? So, I mean, I'm always stoked to see kind of electrification of everything. It's still electric, right? Because it'll be electricity at the end of the day, right? That powers these things. So that's it's exciting to see that in the ferry space and the aviation space, and it's exciting to see it domestically too. That's in New Mexico. They're talking about $250 million of investment in New Mexico with these new facilities. So this is awesome stuff, man. There's great things happening in hydrogen. I know that there's stuff happening around the world. Did you get a chance to peek at what's happening in Australia? They're just in terms of scale, I want to say that they're one of the largest things globally.
Yeah, I love this little article that you sent me. It's a PV Magazine article specifically talking about the battery and hydrogen park. But what I like about it is that they are, and I think I said this last episode actually, is taking an existing coal burning plant and just refurbing it. It is already a location where it's centrally located, is very well connected to their electrical grid, is built out for power generation. But because they're end of lifing all these coal burning plants, they're going to be able to use the same location. And there's really no conversation about the not in my backyard, I don't want to see it, et cetera, because it's already been a coal plant for many decades.
Right.
This is in Victoria, which is the southeastern part of Australia, if I remember correctly. The other thing that took me back is that they have a big picture, and that is not a coal plant. That's a nuclear plant.
I know. What was that all about? I was
the head of the article. So I think you guys probably at PV Magazine, we love you, but don't do that.
yeah, I gotta tell you, where I went with that. I was like, well, it's Australians, obviously. So
like, nice guy.
I have a history.
Anyway, I think it's an absolutely fantastic use of the infrastructure. They're talking about putting 44 megawatt out there in solar, another 80 megawatt in a different farm, and it's all going to be feeding back to this this Octopus Australia facility to generate both electricity for the grid, and any excess goes into hydrogen. So again, making hydrogen from it's a great storage medium, and I'm very happy to see it.
Well, what's neat about that, and I was wrong, that's not one of the largest in the world that's being, and we're talking, I think the plug power in Niagara is much bigger than that. But when we think about this retrofitting of existing fossil fuel plants, coal plants, whatever, you got guys like the what was that, the hedge fund guys out there buying miners and going in there and running up the coal because these plants are getting decommissioned, right?
God,
this is a better use of that plant for the common good of addressing climate change than it is for Bitcoin miners to get in there and hedge fund guys to go and make a killing. So I like seeing retrofits like that rather than retrofits like the aforementioned thing. When we think about hydrogen, I think one of the questions, we'll ask Brian Thomas this, but how do we as investors, as people that are energy wonks or geeks or people that love the energy markets, how do we play a role? And what I was stoked about with this next article, Jed, I don't know if you got a chance to look at this one. This is Play the Coming Green Hydrogen Boom with Plug Power Stock. Of course, we're familiar with Plug, but they're talking about ETFs. Yes, our favorite 3 letters, right? Global X Hydrogen ETF. So this is MSN News here. And if you're on the NASDAQ, HYDR is the ticker. And they're talking about, Plug, right? And apparently this is down. When I see it's down, I kind of get excited because I like the idea of hydrogen. I like the idea of Plug. I like the idea of them deploying all of that tech and scale up there in the Niagara Power Facility. And they're saying that this is like 40% off its peak right now, right? This thing, and then the Plug is actually like 12% of this ETF. So it's a good chunk of this ETF, right? It's kind of like the way that what was the name of the ETF we were getting? TAN. Remember TAN and solar? And it was like Solar Edge was like 10 or 15 points of TAN, right? Yep. And so this is like 12% of this new hydrogen ETF. We got to talk to Thomas on this, huh?
Absolutely. But just to roll back just for a second, for people that don't know what an ETF is, ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund. It's essentially just the evolution of mutual funds. So think, instead of a single stock of companies, it's a basket with a bunch of different stocks in it. And ETFs are driven a little differently. There's some algorithms and programs that go into it to kind of define the rules of what company can go into the basket. And then it kind of monitors itself and rolls over time, drop both buying more and selling off particular assets depending on the rules that you set up. So that's all an ETF is.
So thank you for that. Yes. And we happen to be familiar with that because we had Brian Thomas of Fairwinds Wealth Management on the roller coaster for a solid year. And we talked about ETFs all over the place.
Unbelievable educator. Do give him a call.
Thank you, Brian Thomas, Fairwinds Wealth Manager. Give him a shout. I used to say his number at the end of the show. I can't remember his number right now, but you'll find him if you Google him. And this is where, Jay, in this article here, this is where it says many large green hydrogen projects are coming. They talk about Southern California gas. They talk about ArcelorMittal,
we didn't talk about
Turbia. They talk about all these different ones. And the reason why I had Australia in my mind is the large 6 gigawatt green project in Australia, but that's different than the one we just read about.
That's a different one as well. Yeah.
So it's everywhere, folks. People are basically, people are excited about hydrogen, and it looks like it's getting its kind of time in the sun, so to speak. And for me, that's when I wish Brian was on this show right now because we could ask him what he thinks. But the bottom line on Plug stock is currently selling 48% below its 52-week high of 48.35 a share. And that was on March 11th, 2021. That's about a just solid year ago. And the closest it's been is 45.40 on November 19th. So if it's 50% below, and if you're a bullish guy on hydrogen, like I think we are, maybe this is something we can get into. Maybe this is our tan
Full
of
disclosure,
2022.
I own some Plug Power, but I do want to let folks know, I mean, you don't have to have a huge amount of money to start investing. And then, so if you're interested in this stuff, if you want to participate in any way, it's a good option to start.
I'd say give Brian Thomas of Fairwinds Wealth Management a call.
For sure.
He's a guy that can help you out a lot. Okay,
sure.
Mr. Vericard, this has been our hydrogen show. And I do want to follow up. I want to wrap this up. I'll give you a chance to chat here, but I want to be able to talk about some of the things that are coming for the solar coaster. Exciting stuff. So on 3/25, that's only about 9 days away, we have the Podcasters Roundtable with TigerCom, Mike Casey, all the great podcasters out there. We'll be able to make some fun announcements at that and talk about what's going on in 2022. We have an opportunity to have a couple of maritime guys on the show coming soon. Matt Foley, he's actually a fan of the solar coaster. Aloha, Matt, from Asbury Park, New Jersey, reached out after listening to the show for years. And the new Rebel, which is a like a 60-foot green hybridized Torpedo catamaran. He was selling down in the Miami Boat Show. We're going to get a chance to talk to the guys that are actually running that that boat, basically selling that boat. And we're going to get a chance to learn a bit more about that. I love that stuff.
You want one, don't you?
Of course I do. I do. I mean, I'm definitely geeking out on that stuff, man. It's kind of a toss up between like the Sunreef, if you're in this world of looking at ridiculously expensive catamarans, the Silent 60, which is a straight, catamaran with solar on it. And then this Rebel, which I'd never heard about before, but it's got the Torpedo hybrid drive system. I think it's called the Blue Ocean. I love this stuff. I spend way too much time geeking out on it. And, in about 2 months, we're going to have Hawaii Energy Conference 2021. Just talk 2022. I have 2021 up there. 2022. It is a virtual Hawaii Energy Conference. It's on May 10th through the 12th, I think, or something like that. But there is some discussion about a cocktail party out here in Maui and maybe finding a way to like get virtual people into the cocktail party. So we'll tell you about that as it evolves. But we're, Solar Coaster loves a Hawaii Energy Conference. What else we got going on? The SPAN and Solar Edge installs. Those things are happening. Do you want to say something, Jay?
No, I was just going to mention that you finally got.
Well, why don't you go for it? Why don't you tell
the notification that your hardware? We've been.
Jeez Louise.
This actually was started in 2019, I think, right? I mean, it's just before the
virus came out and then everybody in the butt.
There was a pause for some unknown reason. and now we're back, but you finally got shipping notification. I'm super excited to see this because we've been waiting for it forever.
Yeah, this is great.
To get these systems in and have an actual hands-on play.
So I want to give a big thanks to SPAN and Emily Welch as a primary here. Emily was actually, I got to know her when she was within the Solar Edge machine, and then she moved over to SPAN, and then we were doing this project and just kind of trying to get it up and running. And basically what they're doing is they're sending out to the solar coaster to me a battery bank from the Kokum acquisition, right? So Solar Edge moved into the Solar Plus battery space about 2 years ago, and it's been a while for it to mature to the place where, throughout the pandemic, where they're ready to go, right? So they're actually moving into a kind of a mature marketplace out here in Hawaii, but they're looking for the opportunity to deploy this and test it and have fun with it. And I think that after speaking with some people on the ground about the Solar Edge system, we're talking about PV, optimizers, P400s. I've been saying P320s and I was wrong. They're P400s.
Nice.
And then we're going to do a little bit more PV, some of the bifacials that we've been playing with for a while, Jerry, to get those up out there. And then we're going to have the Energy Hub system, the backup, I think it's called a gateway. And then we have an EV charger, a standalone EV charger. So I'm going to pull the existing inverter I have off. We're going to do the install on that whole system. We can stack a number of batteries. I think it's up to 3 11.4 inverters, Energy Hub inverters to that gateway, and up to like, I don't know, a few, I have to check the stats again, a few of these 10 kilowatt hour Solar Edge batteries to each of those inverters. So there's a lot going on there, a lot of potential for this particular system as it relates to the other leaders out there, that being Tesla, right? That being Generac, that being Enphase with the Ensemble, all the ones that we're acquainted with, right? And there's a bunch of others as well. So
Ford.
it's going to be great to get a hold of that. That's
Ford.
happening in this space. Which one?
Ford.
Which one? Ford.
Ford.
Ford. It's going to be really fun to get a hold of that system, play with it, kind of push it to its limits. One of the hallmarks of the Energy Hub system is similar to Generac in that they're really talking about moving energy around the house rather than simply storing it, but doing other things with it. You have the EV, for example. You have this run on sun EV, only on sun, or optimized the highest level 2 charger when it first came out, right? 11.2, I think, kilowatts or something.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool technology. And then in addition to that, we're not only doing the Solar Edge Energy Hub system, but thanks to Emily Welch over there at SPAN, a Tesla emerging company. The founders are originally from Tesla. SPAN, we're bringing a load control panel. It's a Gen 2, and we're able to dynamically curtail and manage loads that are within the home here in Makawel, but also work with the storage and the production system of the Energy Hub system, Solar Edge. So what a cool combination of technology. We're going to be creating videography around that and sharing that with everybody. That should happen on the week of around 4/18, 4/20-ish, right around the corner. We should be done with that in early May. And yeah, there you go, man. Rocking and rolling with awesome tech. Jay, you coming out from Osaka to test it?
Pardon?
You come out and play?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm super stoked to see the results of this in a real world situation, because all we ever get are fact sheets and white papers and such. I want to have a real play with it. And we were talking about parasitic loads and such the other day. I think the SPAN is going to show you a lot about what goes on in your house.
For sure. And there are some collaborating organizations with SPAN on this. There's the Elemental Accelerator, which is this clean tech funding group based here in Hawaii that has a cohort every year of like maybe a dozen companies or something. They have these awesome companies, and SPAN's one of those, right? And then of course, there's an install cost to these SPAN systems. So they're partnering with Hawaii Energy, our good friends, Brian K. Aloha, Walter, all the rest of them at Hawaii Energy here, where they provide rebates for energy efficiency retrofits. They've got a deal like that going. So we're going to be able to announce what that is shortly as well. A lot of cool people. Hopefully we'll be able to showcase the whole thing at Hawaii Energy Conference and just have a great time doing it. So that's what's going on for the coaster. That's 2022 in March 16th. And yeah, it's been a great show, Jay. Thank you very much. Any final words?
This was not the only hydrogen show we're going to do. You said the hydrogen show. It's like, no, there's going to be more.
Yes, we do have a bunch. We've got Chuck Collins with Hawaii Energy, Hawaii Hydrogen Alliance. Yep. And we've got Michelle Detweiler of Renewable Hydrogen Alliance in Portland. We're going to be doing shows with both of them. They're brilliant people. And a couple of other hydrogen aficionados, if I can say that will be airing shortly. And hydrogen is not just hydrogen. Hydrogen is also storage, folks. All right, this has been the Solar Coaster. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
All right, aloha.
Aloha.